Welcome to the Trader a Traitors podcast. I'm Matthew, a writer working in unscripted TV development, and this podcast is dedicated to the TV phenomenon The Traitors, mainly English-speaking versions, but recently we covered The Traitors India and a couple of other strategy reality competition shows like Netflix's Million Dollar Secret and ITV's Genius Game. So if you've watched those, go back and check out the podcast episodes. This season of the podcast is all about the Celebrity Traitors UK, the first season of that. We'll be deep diving into every episode of the show by recapping the main events, the gameplay, the tactics, and maybe even telling a little lie or two along the way. Every episode, I'll be joined by a new guest co host. And before I introduce today's co host, there's something else I should mention up top. I really ought to have brought this up on the last podcast episode, and I forgot. I always start off by saying I am a writer working in unscripted TV development and then never really elaborate on that. But for now, I have news. I am about to release my debut poetry collection. It's called From the Juniper Room. It explores memory, loss, grief, travel, nostalgia, change, forward momentum, all sorts of things. It's been published by Drunk News Press, a wonderful independent publisher. It's out now. I'll put the link to the book in the episode description. I'm also doing a giveaway competition if you check out my social media. Details of my social media are at the end of the podcast. And I also have a couple of book launch events. I'll be doing one in Stirling on this 18th of October, which is a Saturday, and then Saturday, the 25th of October in London. Again, I'll put more details at the end of the pod, and you can check out the details on my social media. Now, it is time for me to introduce my guest for today. Elliana is a freelancer working across TV, film, podcasting, and digital with a soft spot for Frankenstein, film history, and despite not being Australian, Vegemite on toast. But you have been to Australia, I'm sure.
I
She
have
has,
now.
yeah, I thought so. She's recently started giving tours at the Cinema Museum in London and begs you to visit. Otherwise, she's just a mad woman talking to a mannequin in an old usherette uniform. Eliana, you're you're back on the podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be back.
You, sorry, the line's breaking up. You must be geographically so far away from me. Where
Where
are
are you?
you? You're not like possibly 10 meters away from me right now, are you?
Possibly, but I couldn't bear to sit any closer to you. So I sort of removed myself to a sort of private soundproof booth.
Yes.
Yes.
And as you can see, I'm in Ardross Castle in the lounge area. So we are very far. I'm in another country. I'm in Scotland. Uh, Eliana, are you enjoying this series of Celebrity Tracers?
I really am. Especially the last episode, I have laughed so much. It's brilliant. They've given us classic traitors, and that's what I wanted, I think, for the celebrity version. I didn't want any like sort of new format or new twists to wrap my head around in this season. I just wanted classic traitors. I wanted the celebs to do it just like everyone else had done before them.
Yeah. And last time you were on the podcast, we were talking about the sort of regular UK series. How is this one shaping up in comparison? I mean, it's early days. We've only had three episodes, but is it sort of on par, do you think? Is it just as enjoyable?
It really is for me. I especially it's fun seeing these faces and these characters that you've seen in all sort of different mediums, and then they're all put together in such a different setting. You see, new parts of their personalities coming out. So there is that new layer to it because obviously you think you know these people and you get to see all the best sides of them that you love, and then you get to see this like deeper extra element in this particular setting. But as a game in itself, they're all taking it so seriously, which is great, which is what we want, and I love it. And it's so dramatic, like usual. Yeah, I'm loving it.
Yeah. And it's not just us here in the UK who are enjoying seeing these celebrities. People are watching in other countries. In fact, I'm going to go to a couple of emails from listeners. This is from Carolyn, who sent an email saying, "Greetings from the USA. You've been wondering how non-British viewers feel about the current Traitor season, which features celebrities we may not know. Well, it turns out that I recognise three of them, including one that I did not. So Carolyn recognises Celia Imrie from the FX series Better Things. I'm not aware of that. I've not seen that. Stephen Fry apparently is in The Sandman on Netflix. I only watched a few episodes of that and it didn't continue. Sorry, Sandman fans. And Carolyn recognises Ruth from the Netflix series Fall of the House of Usher, which I haven't watched but have heard lots of people talk about. So people in the USA know some of the people that even I, as a Brit, don't know. Uh,
It's interesting knowing which faces are more international because there are probably a particular few faces that are beloved by a UK audience that actually just might not have much sort of international recognition. And then there's a sort of few odd ones that maybe the UK audiences are less familiar with generally that
mhm.
actually have sort of pierced through to a bigger audience.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I personally didn't know Ruth before this series. Now I want to go and watch her stuff. I love her in this.
Yeah, she's so charismatic and funny, and she's a real standout for me so far. I'm very impressed with Ruth.
Mm.
Uh, Carolyn also has commented on Alan. She says, Alan Carr is the most adorable man on the planet, and his reign as a traitor must be protected at all costs. So thank you, Carolyn's in St. Louis in Missouri. Or is it St. Louis? Different people say it different ways. I'm sorry, Carolyn, if I've said I don't. It's one of those, right? So thank you,
One of them.
Carolyn. We've also got an email from Ryan, who's sort of mentioning something that maybe I missed last time on the podcast. We were talking about why they had ended episode 2 in a cliffhanger, and my co-host Magica and I reckoned, well, and we were kind of right. We thought they've probably ended it halfway round the round table because actually the votes after that became a bit of a landslide. So actually,
Mm.
they stopped at a point where it felt like it could go either way. But Ryan says one thing he didn't mention as a possibility for the rationale behind the cliffhanger is similar to one you referenced earlier in another context. Not showing a banishment for someone in episode 2 means we get to also see them in episode 3, thus giving production more episode value for their fee and keeping around the viewers who especially have been watching for that celebrity just a tiny bit more. So even if it's just an extra 10 minutes, we get to see all of the celebrities apart from Paloma RIP into like episode 3. So maybe it was just a little bit of that as well, like just draw it out as long as possible.
That's a really good point. And I think also the reason, we didn't see anyone go in the first episode, that would have been a tragedy. There's gonna, everyone's gonna be rooting for a celeb. Every celeb's gonna have, their
Yeah.
audience out there who wants to see them for as long as possible. So yeah, we want to keep them in for as long as possible, don't
Yes.
we?
Yeah, that makes sense. We do have more listener comments and emails, but I'll be saving them till a little bit later in the podcast. For now, it's time to initiate our podcast game, The Trade Our Traitor.
Ooh.
I always pause there to put in a little sound effect, but so often
Sorry.
guests always do their own little noise to like amp up the. So I'm going to keep it in. I enjoyed
It's
that.
so
Thank you,
natural.
Eliana.
It's so natural.
Yeah. The game is inspired by traitors' viewers' claims that they could easily spot the traitor's lies and deceptions, and the faithful are idiot for not seeing these things. So we're going to play our own game of secrecy and betrayal to put that to the test. The mission for Eliana and I from here on in is to tell one sneaky lie to one another. Our lie has to be a fabrication, a made-up fact, big or small, about the traitors or anything else. For example, I could lie and tell Eliana that I'm going to a live viewing of the Traitors finale episode at Buckingham Palace. However, I couldn't lie and say that I don't find Alan Carr funny. Why would I say that? That would be so unbelievable anyway, but that would be just a fake opinion. So we're looking for fake facts and false pieces of information rather than fake thoughts and feelings. And listeners, it's time to put your own skills to the test and see if anything lights up your radar. Then at the end of the episode, Eliana and I will test our traitor hunting abilities and see if we can successfully catch and banish the other. Eliana, are you ready to be a traitor and betray me?
I am.
Okay. our game begins now, and it's time for us to dive into episode 3 of the Celebrity Traitors Series 1. To start with, we've got our recap. What do we need to know from episodes 1 and 2? Our traitors have been chosen. There's £100,000 up for grabs for charity, and the traitors had to murder in plain sight. And poor Paloma fell victim to Alan's touch, at which Kate was flabbergasted. And the players' traders have begun to light up. Nico, Tamika, Tom, Kate came under fire at the round table, and we ended on a tie halfway round between Nico and Kate. But we still had 9 votes to come in. So this is where the episode kicks off. We're at Stephen, he's the next to vote, and he votes for Nico. And yet again on the podcast, I'm going to be very smug and self-righteous and say I predicted that on episode 2 that this is the way it was going to go. A lot of people thought Kate was for the chop, but I had a feeling they I've got a couple of reasons why, but I'll go through the votes and then I'll ask you about how you if this is what you thought might happen. Joe's next and votes for Tom, which isn't a surprise. He sort of said that he was going to go that way. Celia votes for Charlotte, which I was a bit surprised at, and she says she can't imagine anyone would think the nation's beautiful songstress would ever be a traitor, but she just might.
I don't
Uh,
think Charlotte looked too happy with that comment.
no, no, she was quite annoyed, I think. And from there, it is just a slew of votes against Nico. Jonathan, Charlotte, Claire, David, Tom, and Nick all vote for Nico. David says that he's had suspicions since the first day, which is interesting. I'm not sure why he felt that way, but my prediction was correct that Nico would go. I it seems like they've chosen. Well, first of all, did you have any? You could completely lie to me here, of course, but did you have any predictions about whether it would be Kate or Nico or someone else altogether?
I I think I did think it was going the way that it did towards Nico, and I think it was unfair, but in a similar way to the sort of the normal traitors where some people might hide a profession, maybe they're a magician, as we've seen before, and they're hiding that because they think that's going to make people suspicious of them. Unfortunately for Nico, it's his legacy as a prankster that's done that to him, and obviously that's not something he could hide. The celebs can't do any of that kind of trickery. But I don't think it's very good. A good way of thinking. Obviously, they have nothing to grab onto in this at this point in the game, really. Um, but to grab onto, what someone's been doing outside of the show is not the best gameplay, and it feels a little bit unfair that in a way he didn't stand a chance. And actually, he was playing it as a faithful as well as he could. It was stacked up against him because of his career.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they've chosen him because of what they know about him online rather than anything he's actually done in the game. Although I'm
Mm.
curious again to hear why David said he suspected him from day one. Uh, and I reckon that Kate would get away with it. I thought her saying, "Look, I'm just really exaggerated and a ham." I think a lot of the other players would sort of be like, "Yeah, that is just Kate Garraway. She is quite sort of emphatic and over the
Mm.
top." Um, and I was going to bring this up later in the pod, but I might as well mention it now because it's relevant here. I do wonder if it was also likely that Nico was going to go because fewer players knew him already. Like I reckon a lot of these celebrities know one another. Like a lot of them will have been interviewed by Kate Garraway at some point, and they all know Jonathan Ross and Alan Carr. I really wonder if that makes them less likely to vote for the big star that they know quite well. It's probably just easier to vote for someone you've never met before.
I agree with that. I think they're not necessarily picking favorites, throughout or so when Alan obviously kills dear Paloma, that's all done behind the scenes. It's a lot easier for him to do it not to her face. Whereas as soon
Yeah.
as they're in that environment where they're sitting face to face, I think the past kind of connections and friendships and relationships they've obviously formed in their various industries over decades probably bubbles to the surface a little bit in those moments and makes them a bit scared or a bit less likely to pick someone who they know very well. And like you say, they know that she is a bubbly, outgoing person, and they know Nico a bit less, and maybe that automatically makes them a little bit more suspicious of this person, who is just less familiar to them. Again, this is all due to sort of ties totally outside of the game, but it does. I think it does have quite a big impact.
Yeah, I agree. So Nico gives his speech. He says, I just want to say I can't believe I'm out so quickly. It's been an honor. You're all great people. I can now reveal that this whole time I've been honest and I'm a faithful. And they're all shocked. Claire looks shook. Stephen does this thing that Stephen does a couple of times in the episode where he just goes, "Oh no." He's so disappointed. It's so interesting to see the celebrities react the exact same way as regular players. And you said it at the start of the pod, like they're taking the game really seriously, which I love. So they're not all just sort of laughing and going, "Oh well, bye Nico." Like they're
Mm.
really gobsmacked. And
There's
uh
something lovely in, I think, how they are all fans of the game. They've got to be to sort of get their agents on this and get them onto the show. And I'm sure there was like a huge queue of people who actually wanted to be on this. So in a way, they probably they feel lucky to be picked. And I think it's maybe rare in their careers to still, for some of them who are, considered legends, to still feel, maybe lucky to get to do something because they're probably not used to sort of like hustling for it so much anymore. Whereas, they're all, I think, really just enjoying the moment and kind of a little bit starstruck by the set and the show and
mhm.
even, Claudia, and the gameplay. So yeah, that's really exciting to see them being excited and yeah, taking it seriously.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Claudia because I've said this already on the podcast in the last couple of episodes, but she is, I mean, she breaks character a little bit once in this episode. We'll get to it, but
Yeah.
she's she looks so disappointed in them. Like she's still keeping up the facade, and off she goes. And Charlotte's mad with herself, and Stephen Fry's saying, "Oh, maybe Nico was set up, or maybe we're just idiots." And I, I, I don't really think Nico was set up. I mean, I guess the traitors chose to put him in the coffin, so that put a bit of a spotlight on him. Other than that, they didn't really need to do that much. I think everybody was kind of looking at Nico anyway, so I think Stephen, as Celia does a hell of a lot, gives the traitors too much credit. Like, I don't think they had to try that hard to get Nico out.
Mm.
Uh, Off they go from the round table then to sort of debrief, and Kate says that she can't believe people turned against her, and Alan and Jonathan are doing their best to seem really gutted about what's happened. We're at the bar, and Jonathan asks Tom Daly, "Well, why didn't you speak up a bit more about Kate? You said earlier in the day you were suspicious of her." And Tom says, "Well, he says I was swayed by Nico. I think what he means is I was swayed towards Nico, but now." He's like, no, I'm going to go for Kate. I still think she's a traitor. I should have stuck with that. And Tom has this interesting moment in his main interview, his confessional, where he says he recognizes it's a bit of a balancing act being a faithful. You have to try and catch the traitors and say what you think, but not too much. He says you can't appear so faithful that you become a target for getting murdered, which is maybe a bit of foreshadowing on the part of the editors. We've got Mark, Tamika, Kate, and Alan in the library, and Tamika's asking Mark, "Why did you go for me? Why do you suspect me?" And Kate voted for her as well. We don't really see the answer, but Mark's sort of sticking with it, and Tamika's like, "Well, I think you're a traitor," which happens an awful lot. In
Also,
the
in this
yeah,
moment, Alan sort of almost accuses, I think, Tamika and Mark or Kate to their faces that they're traitors. I just think there's something interesting in that about Alan's kind of slip of the tongue.
oh
It's
yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit scary. Sometimes, like, you're a bit on edge because he just says stuff sort of so quickly and almost without thinking that he can almost interchange the words faithful and traitor, which to
yeah,
some extent I'm a bit nervous because also I think the previous episode, no, the first episode with the killing of Paloma afterwards he goes to Jonathan in public and goes all done, when
yeah,
they're in the group. And there's just that kind of like ballsy kind of he just doesn't have that filter and
yeah.
those moments I think do make you a bit nervous that he's gonna slip up. But at the same time, I think uh it also means that he could have a good sort of he can kind of talk his way out of it, I think. I think if he does keep sort of mixing up his words, the time when he does that and it's a little bit detrimental, maybe he can kind of, talk his way out of it and it's just Alan being Alan
Yeah,
kind of thing. So that was something I thought was interesting there. Just those little moments that make you go like, "Oh, Alan."
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, in this case, you're right. It didn't. He called them traitors instead of faithful, and they just sort of laughed about it. But yeah, it did make me think he really needs to be careful. But
Yeah.
again, maybe Alan just always gets away with it, and people are like, oh, he's always saying the wrong thing, or he always looks nervous. So uh, I'm standing by my prediction that Alan is going to do very, very well in the show, and people have totally underestimated him. Uh, in the kitchen, Claire is reminding some of the others about this idea that then becomes really important later in the episode. She's talking about Jonathan on day one in the Jeeps when they arrived at the castle. Maybe it was on the way to the first mission. I think it was when they were just arriving, and Claire was in a car with Ruth, Nico, and Jonathan. And Jonathan made this comment about how, well, they could become a little alliance, or, Nico and Ruth were saying, well, we don't really know anyone. You all know each other. And Jonathan's like, well, you've got to, I think he used the word allies, and he said, well, we could be your allies, or something like that. Um, and and Claire's saying, well, he didn't then stick to that at the round table. Is there something funny about that? Like he voted for Nico, but he had said he was going to be Nico's ally. And Celia just made me laugh so much here. Because Celia's has this image of being sort of very prim and proper, this sort of like lovely older English lady, and she just goes, whoever these traitors are, they're fucking brilliant. And I think even the others are like, oh, Celia. It's so like incongruous seeing like Celia and Reese Ware. Um,
Generally, I was obsessed with Celia in this episode, and obviously we're going to talk about her more and more. Yeah.
she's really creating a whole new image for herself. Uh, Night
Also,
then
just to add in
falls.
about this
Oh yes,
moment,
yes.
Kat's in on that conversation as well, and she doesn't
Mm,
deny it. She says it could be anyone. So I think we're starting to see, the traitors hear each other's names being brought up, and the processes are going of like, what are we gonna do about this?
yeah,
Who's at risk potentially within the little trio?
yeah. And Kat has said since she was chosen as a traitor that she is going to kind of look out for herself, and she will let the other two traitors think maybe they're like she'll let Jonathan think he's leading them, but she's under no illusion that that may not really have to be the case at all. Um, so it becomes, it seems like it's midnight. Maybe it's not. Who knows what time they actually all leave? Off they go. Um, and we head to the turret, and all the traitors arrive. They're saying, "Oh, what a day!" By the way, I should have said this last time. I don't usually wear my glasses on the podcast. I wore them last time and this time, but it's my homage to Alan. I'll pretend
Ah.
that's as long as Alan reigns, maybe I should just always wear my glasses on the pod. Um,
They look
they
great, Matthew.
thank you.
And they
They
make you
feel.
funnier as well. They've got a weird like that. Of
Are you saying I'm not funny the rest of the time? Is that what you're
course
implying
not. No.
there? So the traitors feel really bad for Paloma, Nico, but they can't let their guilt get in the way. And Kat tells Alan and Alathan, I've created a new traitor like
Oh
combo
my
name,
God.
Alathan. Kat tells Alathan that she's heard their names being mentioned, like you said. And Alan's like, who's mentioned my name? And it was Claire because Claire had made this comment last time, maybe Alan would be the least likely person to murder Paloma. Should we then look at him? And I thought Alan I turned on the subtitles, and the subtitles say that Alan said, right, Claire. I like to think he said, bye, Claire. I thought it was like,
That's
bye,
what
Claire.
you
Like, you're murdered next. Which really, either way, I just laugh at most things that Alan says.
Yeah, me too.
And they talk through their murder options. They start with Tom. Cue gratuitous shot of Tom in the shower. Of course, they were going to have Tom Daly in a topless in his room at some point. Like, it is no surprise. I was like,
Looking
I'm surprised it took.
extremely kind of serious and brooding and just sort of
Yeah,
just watching
like,
casually with a huge camera in his face. Yeah.
yeah, some sort of like a Radox advert. He, yeah, we're used to seeing Tom like this, I guess. Not just because he's a diver. He just seems to always, be. I mean, he's a very good-looking man, so Tom, well done. And Jonathan says that Tom doesn't trust anyone, which is so that's quite wise of him. So we should be wary of him. And Kat says, yeah, he's really, really perceptive.
Mm.
And I'll come back to it throughout the podcast. It's this, the players keep saying this throughout the episode. Oh, Tom's so clever, he's so smart and bright and perceptive. And I don't know
Do
why
you
they're saying
disagree
it
with
so much. I, well, okay, I'll say it now. Like, well, he's not. He's not in this game. He's not because he didn't find any of the traitor. Like, he was convinced Claire and Kate were the traitors. I'm yet to see the evidence of Tom being this like perceptive, wise player. Like, I'm sure maybe in reality he's very clever and he's obviously very, very accomplished and has a lot of life experience at a relatively young age. And although he's 31, I think, to me, Tom Daly's like eternally 22 or something.
Yeah.
Um, he just doesn't age, but I also watched a bit of Traitors Uncloaked last night, and I don't know if you've seen any of it, but they interview the banished or the murdered players, and Ed Gamble asks them before he reveals the truth, who do you think the traitors are? And when it was sort of a spoiler, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. When it was Tamika and Nico, they both named like three or four people they thought were the traitors. When Ed Gamble asks Tom, who do you think the traitors are? He's like, well, Kate, Claire, Lucy. And he names six people.
Oh,
One
come
of
on.
them,
That's half
one of
the
them's
cast.
Alan. And I'm like, well, okay, you got one right statistically, you're probably going to get one right. So I'm like,
Mm.
where is this genius perception that they're all talking about? Anyway, um, not that I'm hating on Tom. I just think it's very funny that they all have like put him on this pedestal of being the wise, perceptive player.
Mm.
Um,
Especially the
they talk.
company he's in. I mean, we've seen Nick like smash that puzzle in a
Yes.
previous episode, and everyone's going on about how intelligent Stephen Fry is. And they have sort of careers in this sort of academia world that uh it's nice to hear some other names be brought up and say, this person is intelligent too. But I do find it funny when they're sitting at the round table and they're going, one of the traitors, at least one, is extremely intelligent, extremely wise. And I'm like, so are you gonna what by process of elimination are you going to start calling out who's not extremely intelligent and wise? Like how insulting. Surely they would like to consider all of them being kind of intelligent and
Yeah,
wise.
that's true. Yeah, it's got to be a really clever person. So, Kate, we don't need to worry about you. Like, Alan, it's definitely not you. Yeah, you're right. Uh,
Mm.
Next up, they discuss Claire. They think it would create a really big impact, and killing her could help pin things on Kate because Claire's been quite vocal about Kate maybe being like a traitor who's really over the top. It's funny they've really moved on from Claire and how she messed up the episode one challenge. Like, I thought that
Yeah.
was her doomed and it was going to come back to haunt her.
It's the only
And
thing to go on, really.
yeah, but no one seems to be talking about it, which I'm very happy about because as I mentioned on the pod, I have Claire in the sweepstake at work for the if she wins, I win some sort of prize or something. Apparently the prize is that I have to buy a cake, but
Yeah.
which is
So
not a prize,
I
but
I got Tom. I got Tom in the sweepstakes. So maybe you'll be buying me
oh,
cake.
oh no, of course. So
Yeah.
well. Oh,
Been a sad episode.
well, even if Claire doesn't win, I have beaten you, and that brings me some sort of satisfaction. No, I'm kidding. Uh, so maybe Claire's for the chop here, and then they move on to Comedy Joe. I'm calling him Comedy Joe, Rugby Joe, rather than use their real names. It's just easier. They think he's also really smart. Although again, he he didn't pick up on anything at the round table. Like he totally wrongly suspected Tom. But they're saying in general he's a very clever man, and they're worried he's not a sheep because he like so he could just go his own way and vote for. He might catch one of them out and really hammer it home and maybe get other people on side. And he didn't vote for Nico like most other people did. They make the decision. Alan wants to do the honours because he's got a taste for it now. And he says, "Let's get murdering."
I
Uh,
want that to be his new catchphrase. I love it.
yeah, I there's so many catchphrases from Alan in this episode. I've got a favourite one a little bit later, and I I thought they were going to go for Claire. That was my prediction at this point. I could lie. I could be like I predicted they would get to, but I'll be honest. I thought they were going to go for Claire. I thought they would think it would cause the biggest upset. So I did get this prediction wrong. I'll admit. At breakfast then, next morning, Charlotte, Stephen, Tamika, Jonathan arrive first. They're reflecting on Nico's murder. Stephen's thinking about how eventually someone's going to vote for him at round table, and it's going to feel really awful. Again, bit of foreshadowing in hindsight. Next group, it's David, Nick, Kat, Kate, and Rugby Joe. Kat's feeling great. She thinks nobody's suspecting her so far. She feels quite safe. Next up, Ruth, Mark, Lucy, and Comedy Joe come in, which is quite interesting because Comedy Joe was one of our possible murder victims. So they haven't left him for the final group. They've sort of brought him in already, so we know, right, he's safe. That means it's probably going to be Claire or Tom who get murdered. Ruth, then, I thought half jokingly, but actually I think she would be very serious. She has a bit of a go at Jonathan because
Mm,
he, first of all, he pretends to be really sad about Nico, and she's like, "Well, you voted for him," and she says, "And also you had this alliance on day one in the Jeep with us," and he sort of denies. He's like, "No, I didn't," and he sort of brushes it off, and he's like, "Well, if you think someone's a traitor, you've got to go for it. It doesn't matter what I said in the car." And I thought this might be the end of it, but of course it will come back later. And
mm.
Ruth even says in her miv, she's not convinced. She thinks there's something shady going on with Jonathan.
Yeah,
Uh,
really sort of zones in on Jonathan. I
yeah.
don't think she likes how kind of flippant he is about it and how he sort of just brushes off her comment like it was nothing. And clearly the wheels get working in her head for the rest of the
Yeah.
day. And yeah, she holds on to this.
Yeah. And we've got the benefit of knowing she is correct. She could
Yes.
be so wildly off, but no, she's really onto something here. It's just a case of whether she can get people to get on board with it, or is she going to move on from it, or is she going to get murdered before she's got time to do anything about it? Who knows? It means at this point that only Tom, Alan, Celia, and Claire are left to arrive. I I'm I'm going to be quite skeptical and a bit sort of conspiracy theorist like here. It's not like me on the pod, but
Okay.
hear me out. I think it's not unheard of, but unusual to keep a traitor to the very final group of people coming in. Like
Mm,
normally, not always, but normally in the traitors, the last few people to arrive are faithful, and they usually keep the audience and I guess the player, but the audience wondering which one of the potential murder victims did the traitors go for? And I
mm.
do wonder if they've kept Alan, producers have kept Alan in that last group to give him a little bit of help.
Of
Like
an edge.
I wonder if they're trying to make him really like they want him to stay in it for as long as possible, so they've given him a
Producers
little
have
bit of
favorites.
just a
Oh,
thought.
okay. That's an interesting
Um,
thought.
while
I
they
mean,
wait,
if I
oh
had the
yeah,
power, if I had the power, and I probably do a similar thing, because Alan, like who they've obviously seen the first few episodes, and they're like, the nation's going to fall, and they already do with this man. We need to get the value out of him. And he's just bringing so much comedy as well.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
it's an interesting thought.
Mm,
No one would ever admit to it, of course, but
of course not. No, no, no. While they are waiting for the final group, though, Stephen has a little line where he says, I'm not confident that Tom's not a traitor. Again, now I realize they've obviously put that in there because of what's about to happen. There's a knock on the door, and Alan, Celia, and Claire are the ones who arrive, meaning Tom is gone. So Stephen's theory is wrong. My theory was wrong about Claire. We get our flashback to the turret, and they agree on murdering Tom because, yeah, they think he's too smart and he might end up causing trouble for them at some point. Um, in hindsight, I should have known that Tom was going to go, and here's why.
Mm.
Alan, who is a big fan of the Traitors and listens to the pod, and Alan's been on the pod a couple of times with me as a co-host. Alan lives in the States. Alan has this
Sorry, not
theory.
Alan Carr. For a
No,
minute, my
Alan,
brain
sorry,
was
sorry.
like, it's like, sorry, what episode's it? I need to leave and listen to it right now.
When Alan Carr was on the podcast,
So
no,
casually said.
Traitors fan Alan, podcast Alan, has this theory, which often really bears out when you see a bedroom shot of a man topless in the shower or working out. It's usually a sign they're about to be murdered, and it has happened again. So Alan, I'm sure, was watching this episode going, "I'm right again. I'm right." So
Oh
we've
wow, I
seen it in
didn't
many.
realize he
It's
had
this
that
thing that
theory.
happens in many series. So
What is
maybe
it? Is it what's it symbolic of it? What's symbolic about it? Is it like their swan song? Is it their sort of cleansing their rebirth back into normal life? Like what's the imagery here?
I wonder if it's, oh, look at this powerful Adonis, ha ha ha, we're about to tear him down, or it is a swan, like,
Maybe
it's our
more.
last chance to get a gratuitous shot of this objectively handsome man.
Let's get
Let's
our
just do it
money's
while we
worth.
can. Yeah, so maybe it's a bit of that. So we see Tom receiving his letter, and he delivers the classic murdered player line we see time and time again in The Traitors, which is, "I was murdered because I'm a threat." And I mean, he's kind of right because that was the Traitors' reason for getting rid
Mm.
of him, but oh, it's a little bit pompous to be like, "I was a big threat. That's clearly why I'm gone."
It really is. But the line he said after that has made me think more and more that this whole thing is just handed over by the producer. Because then he goes, now I guess I'll go and do one final dive into my grave. I'm like, you did not come up with that. And then I feel like maybe he even cringed a little bit as he said it because it feels very. So
Oh,
then I'm thinking maybe the whole thing is just a little like, we need this line uh fed a little
well,
bit.
now
Yeah.
who's the conspiracy theorist? Hmm.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, you sort of drawn me over to the conspiracy.
yeah. Back at breakfast then, Claire she's gagged, she's gooped, she can't believe Tom's gone. She's known him since he was 12. Of course, people who don't know Claire that well, she is like a sports commentator, presenter, always hosts any big sporting event, and does lots of Olympic coverage. So yeah, she's known Tom since he was diving at a really young age. They all can't believe it, they can't understand it. And Alan delivers I think my favorite line of the episode from Alan in his interview. He goes, "Oh, everyone's so confused. Where's Tom? Why Tom? Well, he's been murdered. Deal with it."
Oh, his evil
It's
side's coming out.
it's he's not doing much to escape the Linda comparison for me because it's like his version of the get over it from her season. So like he
Linda's given
sees
him
her
a masterclass in Tracy's
absolutely.
performance. Mm.
I'm gonna post a little couple of screenshots to the Trader social media comparing Linda and Alan with
Yes. Yes, please.
spoiler for anyone who's not seen series 3 of the Traitor. It's really not a spoiler. A traitor who delivered a classic line of "Get over it" to one of the faithful, and now we have Alan. Deal with it. Just perfect, perfect
Mm.
coincidence. Um, Claudia arrives to, tell everybody at breakfast the murdering has continued. As is tradition, she takes Tom's portrait from the wall, drops it to the floor, gives them their mission clue, and says a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, they were all chained up. So that's the connection. I don't know why I acted like that was really obscure and it was so obvious. It was very literal what the clue was. Um, Off she goes. We get some chat around the castle. We've got a big group gathering outside, and Alan is just he's like, I mean, who gets rid of an Olympian? It's great. And in the kitchen, we've got Jonathan and Rugby Joe. They're chatting about Tom, and Jonathan saying, "Well, Tom was suspicious of Kate and Claire. Does that mean something? But is that too obvious? If they were traitors, would they have killed him?" Which is funny because that sort of thinking is going to come back round later for for Jonathan having to decide should he murder someone that's very vocally come for him. Meanwhile, Claire she's still livid about Tom's murder. She just doesn't understand. And I get this actually. I get her thinking. She asks a good question. She says Tom was quite vocal last night at the round table. Well, she says actually he received 2 votes. He was on other people's radar. So why would the traitors have got rid of him? Shouldn't they have kept him around? He would have been a great scapegoat to get banished. So I thought that was a good question to ask.
I
And it did
think so.
make me
I
think,
think
yeah,
that's the usual strategy, right? It's, where are other eyes looking and use those people, keep them in the game, and they're going to, act as a bit of a disguise for a while and sort of keep any of the heat off of you.
yeah,
But they sort of just instead wanted, I think, and really, maybe it's a bit of a riskier move, because then eyes could be pointing towards them. But that's sort of what they did with this murder. Just everybody was a bit in shock and didn't really know what to think. Didn't
yeah,
really point suspicions in a particular direction, which we'll see kind of that at the table later. It was quite a varied, diverse sort of um, number of names coming up.
yeah, yeah. And Ruth, like everyone else, keeps going on about Tom being really observant and he was too much of a threat. And I still don't really know why they're saying this, but Ruth is also still focused on Jonathan and his apparent alliance. And um, she's telling this to Claire. I don't think Claire's really sold on it, but Ruth has a great line where she says, "Don't piss in my ear and tell me it's raining," which is great. Her delivery is fantastic. It's Judge Judy does a very similar line. It's often in memes and stuff like that. She's like, "Don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining." So we head off to the mission, and we get a few things in the jeeps on the way there. First of all, I'm calling them jeeps. Are they jeeps? Are they just big cars? I don't know. I don't know anything about cars.
Jeep,
I
Jeeps are cars, are they not? Are they the same thing? I think they're
they're
the
they're like
same
a type
thing.
of car. I just see a big black vehicle and I'm calling it a Jeep. Um, Kate reckons there will be a massive legend as a traitor, whilst Jonathan is sitting in the front seat going, yes, nodding along. And she even says, I mean, should we start looking at people like Stephen and Alan Carr and you, Jonathan? And little does she know, she just named 2 of them.
I
And
don't think he
Jonathan,
denies being a big legend either.
yeah, he's just like, yeah, it could be me. I guess you should look at me as a big legend. And he he says, well, all of our names are going to come up at some point, and I'm not afraid of that. I'm a faithful, so I'll be able to defend myself. It's fine. Meanwhile, in another car, Comedy Joe reckons he's like, he's still talking about Paloma being murdered, and he's like, well, there's no way it was Alan. And Ruth says, well, that would be the twist of the century. And I would love to do like a viewing party with this cast to see, I mean, with any cast of the traitors, to see them watch all of these moments in hindsight and be like, I can't believe I said that. It would
Definitely.
be
That'd
great.
be a perfect sort of reunion show, that kind of like bonus episode at the end that you'll get in
Yeah,
reality shows sometimes. That's exactly what this should be, watching back all of the best moments,
yeah,
without them, knowing necessarily what's gone on yet.
yes,
Yeah, getting the reactions.
yeah.
I want to see that.
We arrive in the woods then for our mission, and there are these robed figures lining the road, and they surround the cars. They approach, they pull the doors open, they lead them out. It's all a bit creepy. The
Bit
players
of
don't know what's going
theatrics.
on. Yes, very theatrical. And they are led off to Claudia's cabin. And we've seen Claudia's cabin a couple of times in UK Traitors, with slightly different missions each time. Who can forget Alexander from season 3 and the singing dolls and the backward singing? All took place in the cabin. And inside, they're chained to this metal ring in the center. I've seen a very similar task to this in Traitors New Zealand, with players chained up and having to unlock themselves. And Claudia welcomes them to what she calls the worst team building away day in history. She's obviously not watched some episodes of The Apprentice. And this is the moment where I like missed what happened. Because Celia suddenly like can't contain her laughter and Claudia's like, is something funny or whatever. And
This is my
Celia's like,
favorite thing to happen in the history of the traitors, I think.
Celia says that she farted, and everyone just can't stop laughing, including even Claudia can't keep it together at this point. It's just like if you told me this was going to happen, pick the player who did it. I would have been like, well, probably like Alan Carr, but not Celia, not dear Celia.
Because I always own up Claudia. Claudia's like, me too, Celia, me too. I honestly went back and rewatched this bit about 4 times because I was laughing so much I couldn't keep going with the game and I had to pause and be like, no, no, I need to go back. I want to know how long the cast members were there for. I had to sort of like let it cool down for about 20 minutes because every single person was in.
Uh,
Um, oh my God. Also, I
but
want to I love like the cast members, like the social media that they're doing around like some of the funny moments. Did you see Celia's one that she posted this morning about this?
no.
I was crap. I've not even didn't even know Celia was on social media. And she's like impersonating Claudia. And obviously we've had like Alan's one with Kat yesterday where they were like singing a song. And
Yeah.
it's like an extension of the show. I'm loving it so much. As soon as an episode's done, I'm like, right, social media, what have they posted?
Yeah, I've only really been watching Alan's funny little videos that he's doing. Um,
Mm.
it's it's so funny when I watch these videos. You know, Alan, yeah, he did a video with Kat. He's done a little funny video about Paloma, and I I wonder. I'm like playing out the conversations in my head that production must be having with them. Like, look, you can post about it on social media. You can do funny videos. Do not spoil anything. Like, do not ruin anything about anything that hasn't aired yet. Like, be really careful. I wonder if their social media videos are even being like screened first. I don't know. To be like,
Yeah,
can we just check you're not going to spoil anything first?
there are a group of
But
people in a room like sweating over this probably, and it's probably their entire job to make sure things don't go out ahead of time.
yeah, but what this will be like memeified and viral, and I'm sure this will be like one of the highlights of the series. It's just so ridiculous. Uh, so the and of course just that it's Celia of all people is just that's what makes it. So
Iconic.
the mission itself. The players have 25 minutes to release themselves and leave the cabin. They'll get £500 per player, meaning potentially there's £8,000 to be won. There are 4 keys in the cabin, the rest are outside. Each key has a clue about the whereabouts of the next key, and there are 2 shields to be found outside. I'll talk through just sort of some of the highlights of the mission. Not that I'm implying it's not the most important part of the game, but we don't need to go through every single second, I don't think. They have a chat about who should be released first, who'll be good at following clues. They talk about maybe Mark. Mark's like, I'm really fast, and Stephen, and um, Nick, like I would pick Nick based on that first mission with that puzzle. Like anytime there's a puzzle, I'd be looking at Nick now. Claudia starts the timer, off they go. The first keys just drop from the ceiling, and I thought, oh, okay, that was easy. I thought they had to like search through the cabin for them, but it's not as difficult as that. Nick, Cat, Stephen, Mark are the first unlocked. They have little pictures, leads them to the water pump. However, throughout the mission, there's this twist that every time the players outside do something, there's a consequence inside. There's water dripping, there's sparks flying. Tamika thinks that they're going to drown. Claudia talks to camera for a moment and just says, "Please release Celia. I love her." And I think, me too. Uh, Ce- Celia, Tamika, and Lucy are out next. Then they have to do something with screws and bolts. And um, Ruth says that the worst part of the mission is standing next to Kate the whole time because she's like screaming so loudly in her ears. I, I'm gonna,
Ruth
I'm
is
gonna.
ruthless.
Ruth is ruthless,
Ruth is
and
ruthless.
I'm gonna say it now. This is controversial, and this leads on to a hot take from one of our listeners a little bit later on.
Mm.
Stephen Fry, I don't think he's doing that much in this mission. There, I said it. Like, they've picked him because they're like, Stephen's so smart, he'll be able to solve these clues. I don't know if he's doing that much to help. All of the little
Yeah.
clips I saw, he's sort of like bumbling about, and the other people are doing all the hard work.
I
There
don't
we
know
go.
if he's proved himself massively in any of the missions yet. I remember, when he was trying
Right?
to think of the Shakespeare people who had died. I mean, I'm not saying I'd be able to think of that off the top of my head. But he didn't, come up with the result. Yeah, I'm sure he is very, very smart, but he's not necessarily applied it yet on the
Mm,
screen. We've not seen it for ourselves yet, necessarily.
yes. Eliana, our listener Sean will be nodding vigorously to what you're saying because he has said a very interesting email that I'm going to come to later on, agreeing with some of what you've just said.
Hmm.
The two Joes are released next, and then there are like horrible pooey feathers blowing into the cabin, and the others are whirling handles and gears, and there's a pulley system, and it takes a long time to complete, and eventually, hooray, they all make it out, £8,000. And there's a shot of Alan leaving the cabin, and all I could see is like the burglars in Home Alone after they've encountered Macaulay Culkin, and like they get covered in glue and feathers and stuff. Like, I should really do a side by side of those and put on social media as well.
I
It,
love that at the
it,
end of the mission, like this moment, it turns into a bit of a rom-com because Alan compares it to Kevin Costner rescuing Whitney Houston in The Bodyguard. So you've got Stephen Fry
yes.
coming in and whisking Alan Carr away.
Just iconic lines left, right, and
I
center
think
from Alan.
you should do a little
And
Photoshop side by side of the Bodyguard poster and then Alan
right.
Carr and Stephen Fry, please.
Right. Okay. I'm making notes. Bodyguard, Home Alone. So many movie references here. Okay, great. I don't care if I don't have the rights to those images. I will be putting them online. Uh, allegedly. Don't sue me, anyone. I thought the mission was over, but no, there's still time left, and no one's found the shields, and they're really going for it. Like they're digging through these troughs of slime and mud. Claire gets one first, which again is quite good for me because I've got her in the sweepstake. I mean, she could be banished, but she's not going to be murdered tonight. And Mark gets one next. And he is really taking the game seriously. Like, not just at this moment, but in general, he's so committed to the game. And, later we'll see the fallout of him getting things wrong with Tamika. He's so pissed off about it. But again, I'd rather that than they weren't. They were just sort of laughing it all off, and it wasn't serious. Like I'd like to see them invested. Back in the Jeeps slash big cars, players
You've got
theorize
to make up
about.
your mind, Matthew. You
I know
can't
what they
say this
are.
every single episode has a Jeep slash car. You've got to decide one or the
Yeah, or I'll come up with some cool pun about what they might be. If anyone's got a suggestion, send them in.
breakers.
Tra-
No, cut that out, Matthew. It's the closest I could get. I mean, they're definitely not tractors.
Tractors.
Breakers.
If a tractor appears later in the series, I will call it a tractor.
Breakthrough. Okay.
So in these vehicles, the players are theorizing about how the shields might affect Claire and Mark. Are they going to maybe feel a bit more emboldened at the round table now? And we get a moment of Tamika talking about Mark. She still thinks he's a traitor. Back at the castle, Mark is in the billiards room, I'm calling it, and he's talking about how tonight maybe he's going to hold back at the round table and he won't say so much. Cut to Tamika just like, Look, she's so pleased with her. I love Tamika, by the way, and she's very. She thinks that this is proof he's up to something. Something's going on. I thought maybe he realized how wrong he was last time, but actually, as it turns out, that's not the case at all. He still thinks Tamika's a traitor, and Ruth is like, "No, you should speak up if you want to catch traitors. Come on, Mark, you can't hold back." Celia, for the 100th time, talks about how clever the traitors are, and she decides to go snooping. And which is just brilliant. She sneaks off to the kitchen. Well, she doesn't sneak. She just walks in and literally tells them, "I've come to snoop on you." And Alan like takes the words out of my brain, and he's like, generally if you're snooping on people, you're not meant to tell them you're snooping. Literally my thoughts. Just comedy gold all round. We've got the two Joes in the library, and they agree to do a little countdown, like three, two, one. Reveal your suspicions. Comedy Joe goes for Stephen. Sorry, Comedy Joe goes for Jonathan. Rugby Joe goes for Stephen. And they're both like, oh, interesting. Comedy Joe thinks that Jonathan is the only one who'd have what he calls the gumption to murder Paloma. I, I'm not really sure why, but And he also, I
Would have
think,
murdered
again, is
someone. Hmm.
yeah, and I think he mentions Alan again. He's like, well, Alan definitely wouldn't do it. And I just I just wonder, like, was Paloma that big of a character that y'all can't believe somebody murdered her? Like, I mean, maybe, obviously, I don't know Paloma Faith personally, and she is quite. I guess she comes across as quite a sort of loud or a big personality, and she's quite sort of frenetic and
Hmm.
very unique. But it's just funny that they're like, who would have ever murdered Paloma? I'm like, well, I don't think it was that big a deal, but hey,
Yeah.
uh,
I think whoever
rugby.
it's going to be with the first murder, it's always going to be how could they murder this person? Because the
Mm,
first to go, it feels a bit more ruthless, doesn't it? You've not
mm,
even sort of had a chance to spread your wings in the game. So you know, partially maybe Plum, she is like a bit of a larger than life character, but the line's always going to be how could they murder her, isn't it? It's always they're always
sure.
going to be in disbelief, even though it's got to
Yeah,
happen
I guess so.
with it.
And Rugby Joe thinks that Stephen is possibly a traitor because he got things. He's got this like mad reason. He's like, well, Stephen got things wrong at the round table last night. And I think what he's saying is, well, that made me follow him, and now I look like an idiot, and I don't like looking like an idiot. And but Comedy Joe is like, no, Stephen's the opposite. He's my absolute faithful. And
Mm.
he comes up with this theory that Claudia would, or he says Claudia, meaning production, have chosen Stephen Fry as a faithful as the ultimate test of his smarts. Like, can he be the person to break the code and find the traitors? Which is an interesting way of thinking of it. And Rugby Joe has this big dogs theory that he comes up with. He thinks maybe Jonathan and Stephen have been pitted against one another, and um, maybe they're onto something. Maybe that is kind of what's happened. And I wonder if Jonathan should actually be worried now. It's time for the round table. As we head in, we've got Ruth saying she's out for blood, and that is the blood of Jonathan Ross. And a little moment of David saying he's trying to remember, like, everybody could be a traitor. It doesn't matter who I like. And here I'm reminded again that I feel like we've seen so little of David. Like, I don't feel like I've got much of a sense of him so far. He's not had much screen time, which is a bit of a shame because he's probably very interesting. I also feel like Lucy Beaumont hasn't had much screen time, even though she's so
Mm.
funny and
Apart from being put in the coffin, we've not seen her much.
yeah,
Like Nick's not had a lot either, aside from
mm,
the puzzle.
yeah,
There's a couple of them who does that suggest they're going to be in it for the long run, maybe?
yeah,
In the fact that, we're going to get to see them a little bit more down the line. And are we
yeah,
seeing a lot more screen time for people who are coming out earlier, aside from the traitors in terms of,
hmm
the faithfuls?
yeah,
That's in terms of editing, that's a possibility.
yeah, yeah. I can see that.
Mm.
So Claudia arrives to round table, does her usual chat and introduction, tells them the prize fund is £27,500 now, and opens up discussion. Ruth begins saying that they need to all be a bit more forthcoming, and that last night everybody jumped on the bandwagon just to stay hidden, and they shouldn't. I mean, I think they should do that if you want to survive. But Ruth's like, no, we need to catch the traitors. And Celia speaks up and says she's been focusing on what I think is very clever. She says, look, the traitors probably aren't going to want to be seen talking to each other too much. So I've been looking at who doesn't spend a lot of time together. And she says most people do seem to be talking to everybody, but some don't. And she names Kat. And I thought, oh, wow,
Out of
Celia.
nowhere.
But
Mm.
then she says, also Charlotte. And I think, oh, okay. And Kat is like, well, no, I've talked to Charlotte quite a lot. I don't know what you're talking about. Tamika then comes for Celia and reckons that Celia was a bit too confident after the traitor selection, says that she was acting like a leading lady. And I mean, well, Celia is a leading lady, so fair enough. And Alan even pipes up here and he sort of accuses Celia of deflecting a bit too much and throwing out random names like Charlotte. And I'm glad that Alan is doing this. Like I think it's wise of him not to just sit and say nothing at round table. So I think it is wise to every now and
Mm.
then throw something out. Like you've got to look like a faithful who's trying to catch the traitors.
obviously you want to be friends with everyone and be someone who makes people feel good and make people laugh because people are going to want to just keep you around naturally. But I was scared that he was going to be too much. He wanted to be everybody's friend a little bit too
Mhm.
much and actually wasn't going to sort of pull any punches. So it's nice to see him stepping into that definitely at the round table because
Yeah,
he's not really said much yet in those more tense moments.
yeah,
He can't just be the comedic relief in this game. You know, he's got such a crucial part in it. He's got to, you know, do that. And yeah, so I think that's good gameplay from him.
agreed. Claire then adds in this point about Alan actually that I thought was going to come and go, but she's really sticking with it. Where she's saying,
Mm.
"Look, let's go back to Paloma, who's the person that we would never suspect of doing that. The least obvious person is Alan, and that alone makes me think maybe it is him." And Alan just sort of flat out denies it, and he's like, "Well, I was as shocked as anybody else. I couldn't believe it. I don't know what else to say." And Lucy's sort of going, "Yeah, come on, Alan. No, no way you could have
Do
done
you feel
that."
like he's a bit nervous here? When he's defending himself, he's a little bit like, I don't know. I maybe it's just the section we saw of, you know, what his body
Mm,
language, but he looked, I don't know if he defended himself super well here.
mm.
No one picked up
It's
on it, but I was like, oh, Alan, you look so nervous at this point.
yeah.
You know?
It's so difficult to say. It's so because we know he's a traitor, so it's
Yeah.
difficult if we are reading it with what we know, but
Maybe just
would
I was nervous. Maybe I was projecting.
yeah, yeah. It's difficult to say from their perspective round the table. And is Alan just kind of like that a lot, and it doesn't come across as strange? I don't know. I don't know. Tamika then comes from Mark, and which isn't that surprising. She focuses on how, again, he was after the funeral mission, he was too distant and too observant, and she thinks that he did the same today after Tom's murder at breakfast. He didn't look shocked, and he was sort of just looking at everybody else. But Mark makes a point that I think makes sense. He's like, well, the traitors know that Tom's not coming through the door, so they are going to have to pretend they're shocked. So the best way for us to assess people is to look around at everybody's reactions. Who is acting like they're not surprised or is overdoing their shock? And I love Tamika again, but I don't think what she's saying makes sense here. Like I
I think
understand why Mark is looking at everybody else.
And I think really Tamika's coming for Mark because Mark's gone for Tamika.
Yeah.
It's but Mark was, you know, I would probably feel the same. I think when you're in the moment, although you don't want to take it personally, there's a little part that's like, well, if you're going to come for me, I'll come for you then.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have anything else to go on.
Now, Nick also says he thinks that Tamika's changed her behaviour, which I was really surprised at. And even Charlotte steps in and sort of comes for Tamika too, and she is just gobsmacked at this response from people. She didn't expect it at all. Rugby Joe comes in with his big dogs theory, and
Mm.
he bets that, yeah, the two big dogs are Jonathan Ross and Stephen Fry, so it's likely that one of them's been picked as a traitor, but he can't work out which one it is. And as he's saying this, cue Kate Garraway doing, but who's who? Like it's so over the top, as she does to everything. Comedy Joe reiterates his earlier idea that he thinks Jonathan's the only person to have the metal to kill Paloma. And Jonathan's like, well, yeah, I get that. I am a big dog, and I can see why you think that. But he says, well, I can't prove a negative. I can't prove that I didn't do something, which is
Mm.
fair enough defense. And Ruth comes in for Jonathan now. Here's her moment. She talks about this alliance in the car. She thinks that's very indicative of a game player. And we get into what feels like quite an awkward, straight up clash of you said this, no, I didn't say that, where we've got Ruth and Claire saying, yeah, you were in the car with us and you said that you would be in an alliance with Nico. And Jonathan's just saying, I didn't say that. And it happens a lot on the traitors and in life.
Mm.
People do misremember things or create kind of false memories of the exact wording that they used. And I don't think either of them are lying. They just remember it in slightly different ways. And we did see the flashback. He didn't actually say the line, "We are now in an alliance." He said something along those lines. I think he said, well, we could be your allies, or hey, you've got two allies now. Like just quite flippantly. He didn't formally say, let's agree here and now, we're an alliance, the four of us. It wasn't quite as serious as that. And anyway, even if he did say that, doesn't mean that he couldn't change his mind. But Ruth is saying, I do get her point that she's like, already you were really thinking like a game player, and so
Yeah.
that makes me think you're quite strategic to have even thought to say something like that. And Claire acknowledges, yeah, look, you were probably just saying it to make Nico and Ruth feel better in the moment because they were saying they didn't know anyone, and I do think that's true. Um, but Ruth
That you've
accuses
seen a
Jonathan.
capability
Yeah.
for backstabbing, or at least Ruth, she's seen a capability for backstabbing in him, and I think she's right.
Yeah.
And she's going in on it so hard. I don't think this is something she's going to drop.
hmm Yeah. I yeah, she's really gonna just keep going for Jonathan. I guess she probably has no. It seems like no one else has done anything that suspicious to her. Like this is the number one thing that she spotted, so she may as well stick to it above anything else. Well, I think she thinks she's seen a couple of things about Jonathan. Like she also says you blindsided Nico at the round table, and Jonathan says, "Well, I didn't blindside him. I'd already told him that I'd heard his name come up, and he says I told several people I heard their names, and we saw him do that with Kate, and Kate sort of nodding along like, yeah, yeah, Jonathan did come to me beforehand and say that my name was probably going to come up at the round table. I think Jonathan's doing a generally decent job of like quite calmly defending himself. That's my impression. Like I
Mm,
think he talks about well, I'm playing the game as a faithful. Like I want to tell people my theory. I want to test the waters if people's names are coming up. That's how I'm playing it. So I kind of feel like he's doing an okay job. Not for Ruth, like she's coming from no matter what.
mm.
But Claudia closes the discussion at this point, and I was quite surprised. I felt like maybe it's just my wrong impression. I felt like most of the round table in the edit was very Jonathan focused. It like that was just the way I experienced it in a very subjective way. So I couldn't see how the vote was. I was really worried that Jonathan was going to go here.
The way it was
Uh,
edited, it felt like Ruth was sort of nailing, sort of putting the nails in the coffin, essentially. And
yeah.
maybe it's just again edited like this, but it feels like when the discussion closes directly after, someone's name has been brought up, a lot of the time that is the person who's then
Mm,
going to go because that's the name that's going to kind of stay in people's minds. But
yeah.
then again, we don't know it even, which way around those names were brought up. It could have been the conversation could have been sort of uh mixed around a little bit. But yeah, the way it's edited, that's how it feels at that moment that, oh
hmm
my God, Jonathan, I think he's going to be going.
Yeah, that's how I felt. And as we see them all writing down their names, we've got Lucy again, just furiously like rubbing things out and changing her mind. She did this last time. So here are the votes. Rugby Joe starts off and goes for Kate because she pointed him towards Nico last time and he thinks that was her sort of deflecting from herself. Lucy goes for David, but she's rubbed out Jonathan's name and she thinks that David's very clever. That's why she's going for him. Kat says that she's going with this big dogs theory. And for a moment,
Mm,
I thought she was going to turn on Jonathan,
me too.
but she goes for Stephen Fry.
Mhm.
Stephen votes for Charlotte. Comedy Joe goes for Jonathan. Celia votes for Kat. She thinks that Kat's been very nervous and would make a great traitor. Jonathan votes for Ruth. He pretends that she's just deflecting and that she's the traitor. Charlotte votes for Tamika. Claire votes for Alan, which A means each of the traitors has had a vote now, and we're 9 votes in, and it's 9 separate votes. There's no duplicates so far. It's such
Yeah.
a spread out one. It's so different from last time. But things change a little bit going forward. Now we've got David. David votes for Stephen. He says that Stephen's the cleverest person he's ever met, which backs up lots of viewers' predictions before this series even started that Stephen Fry would just become a natural target because people wouldn't trust him and would think he would make a great clever traitor. Then Nick votes for Tamika. Ruth votes for Jonathan, which is unsurprising. So we've got this sort of three-way tie. Jonathan, Tamika, and Stephen have 2 votes each. Tamika votes for Celia but calls her Miss Celia, which really makes me laugh.
I like when Tamika voted, she said, I'm going with the big dogs theory. I'm going for Celia, or mispronouncing. But to this point, the only thing that annoyed me about the big dogs theory, it was very male focused. I'm like, there are
Mm,
some female big dogs in here, but I feel like
yeah,
the automatic assumption is that the big dogs are, these legendary men. And I'm like, Celia is a legend as well. Um, and so I like that. I think I don't know, I felt like Tamika was sort of making a little point with that because no one
yeah,
had brought up Celia's name in association with the big dogs theory, and Tamika did. So I was like, yes, feminism.
yeah. Absolutely. I would so include Celia in that. And even maybe this is not maybe this is a bad take, but I kind of think his Kate has been one of the big names here. Like to me, I don't know, I just think of Kate Garraway as being like in the UK, incredibly recognizable. She's on TV every morning on ITV and Good Morning Britain. So I feel like she's one of the biggies. So yeah, I'm also glad that Tamika was like, Miss Celia, she's a big dog.
Yeah.
Alan also votes for Celia. And that's a brilliant moment of just alleviating the tension where he says next time she goes snooping, she should look in the mirror. And which means Celia now joins the tie, and there are only two votes left to go, so it's very, very close. And sadly, it goes the way of Tamika. Both Mark and Kate vote for her. And Kate even admits, like, she doesn't really have anything to go on and she's quite clueless. And Tamika looks genuinely upset, and we see Kate sort of wiping a tear away too. Tamika has been voted out. She stands up for her speech and says, It's been really lovely meeting all of you. I'm just a bit stunned, if I'm honest. I am a faithful. Cut to Mark looking awful, and Stephen again making one of his just, oh, noises.
I think
And
Alan had sort of like weird gritted grimace look.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, obviously he's quite happy they've got a faithful out, but yeah, just is doing his best to look like, oh man, how have we done it again? We've got
Well,
it
I
so
wondered if he was
wrong.
doing that to like repress some kind of smile or sinister, a bit over the top, like he was sort of trying to like draw something back in.
Possibly, yes.
Mm.
Claudia scolds them all, of course, and says, Sleep well if you can. And off she goes. They're all left in silence, looking a bit devastated. And Jonathan tells us, the viewer, he was in a state of growing panic all night. It really could have been bad for him. And Alan's consoling Mark, who, in a truly Scottish way, says he's feeling shite. And he, in his interview, apologizes to Tamika. And he really sort of feels like he storms off from the round table. He's so annoyed at what he's done. Even kicks the chair thing in the foyer, the sort of little circular couch thing that they've got as he walks past. And they all leave the table. We've got a bit of a debrief. Mark feels awful. They're all in a really low mood. Charlotte's trying to make him feel better. And we've got Alan in the kitchen asking Ruth, "Do you really think Jonathan's a traitor?" And she's just like, "Yeah, absolutely." She's so funny. Uh, Alan's telling Celia, "Look, the real reason I voted for you was the fart in the cabin." and and with that, it's midnight.
Can't be
uh,
living with that. I can't.
no,
Yeah.
of course
You
not.
gotta go.
Kat and Alan do have a little quiet moment alone in the kitchen before they all leave, and they both admit they if they had to, they would have thrown Jonathan under the bus, which is fair play. Like, yeah, if that's what you've got to do, that's what you've got to do. It's a little bit risky of them to admit that to one another. Like, the other one could have been like horrified when they said that, or could run off
Yeah.
and tell Jonathan, but they seem to be on the same page and they've got a bit of a trust between them.
It's a classic Alan sort of not being afraid to just say what he thinks, and then Kat's a bit more like shh, next to
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
Alan, he gets away with it again and again. That was such an exciting moment. I love it when you first see that the traitors maybe going to turn against someone, and there's a little plan forming. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, yeah,
Yes.
love,
Yes.
love that little bit, a little fun little bit, sort of, to begin to bring the episode to a close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and closing out our episode is the a few moments in the turret to talk about murder. they're slightly panicking, especially Jonathan. They've all had a vote now. They talk a little bit about shields. It's very annoying that Claire has one, but maybe it'd be too obvious to go for her anyway. So their possibilities for murder are Ruth, and they wonder, is it too obvious to murder her? She's been so vocal about Jonathan, or do they try and pull a bit of a double bluff? We do have a listener message about this, so I'm going to come back to that. They they talk about Charlotte. Alan suggesting, well, he says she's been so wrong so confidently, but maybe one of these days she's going to come for one of us. Should we get rid of her now? They talk about David. David's really smart. He's perceptive. If he, um, gets onto. They do say this thing that I don't think makes sense. They say, oh, he might start to put heat on. Oh, they say if we murder David, that would put some heat on Lucy because Lucy voted for him. But I
Hmm.
think it shouldn't be the other way around. That if they murder Lucy, it'll make David look like a traitor because she voted for him. So I didn't quite follow the logic there.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true. I hadn't thought of that. I think you're right. I think they got
yeah, I wasn't sure.
um yeah.
They make the decision and they finish by commenting on teaching someone a lesson. Which doesn't scream David to me. It sort of makes me feel like they're going for Ruth, but is that too obvious? Are the editors throwing us off here? They do it quite a lot with the like surely they don't leave us with this obvious a clue as to who's going to get murdered. So we're left at the end of the episode on that note. Uh,
Mm.
Normally I go straight to predictions here for who's going to get murdered, but I'm going to start us off leading us there with a voice message from James. So James sent a little voice memo in asking us to think about what Jonathan might do. Here we go.
Hi guys, it's James again. Here's a question for you. If you were in Jonathan's position, would you murder Ruth and then claim that you were being set up by the traitors and do it as a double bluff? Or would you keep her in and try to stay a bit more under the radar, but then knowing that she's going to probably keep bringing your name up again and again?
This is a difficult decision to make. I I don't think I would murder Ruth. Um, I just think it brings you under the spotlight too much. I think Jonathan's name will be a sort of part of the central discussion of the round table. And even if he's able to defend himself with that double bluff, and they're talking about triple and quadruple bluffs now, which I can't wrap my head around, if I'm honest. Um, I just think at the end of the day, your name being out there at the round table, if people are clutching at straws, whether it's been brought up sort of, whether it's been well defended or not, people might just write your name down on that slate because it's the only name going around their heads. I just think you do not want to be mentioned, or you want to be mentioned as little as possible at the round table, or at least if you are, defend yourself, sort of move on. Like it's not a central, it's too risky. Obviously, Jonathan's name already has been brought up and it is in the ether now, and it probably, regardless, people are going to be discussing him in the next episode. So is this his chance by murdering Ruth to like fully defend himself and that be kind of a final defense and hopefully people can move on from that? I don't
Um,
know. I think it's too risky. I think if they murder Ruth, I think Jonathan will be going pretty soon. That's my prediction. What do you think, Matthew?
yeah, I think it's easier to just keep her around and then claim, well, if I was a traitor, I would have murdered you, than to murder her and convince everyone that you've been framed as a traitor. I mean, maybe if a couple of episodes go on and she's really getting support behind her and she's maybe after 2 or 3 days you then go right, let's just do it now. But I wouldn't do it immediately. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll ask you. Well, who do you think they're going to go for murder then? Who's on the chopping block next?
I
With
think
that in
it's Charlotte.
mind, oh, okay, right. I
Mm,
I think it. Uh, I kind of want to agree with you. I think. Yeah, I don't. I
mm.
think Ruth's too obvious. Oh, right, you're going Charlotte.
Go on, what are you
I
going to
don't.
go for? You want to say Ruth. You want to say Ruth.
I want to say Ruth. Just maybe they're going to do the mad double, triple, quadruple bluff thing, even though I don't think they should.
You know
Right, do you know
what?
what? I'm just
I,
going to say Ruth.
you know what? Going by actually Alan's and Kat's conversation just before, maybe they're going to let Jonathan pick Ruth. Yeah, no, I'm changing. I'm changing my decision. I think it'll be part of because Jonathan was sort of on board with getting rid of Ruth, right, in this discussion.
Yeah,
All it just takes a little encouragement from Alan and Kat saying, yeah, you could be right. Maybe you can do your double, triple, quadruple bluff and you'll be fine, knowing that this is the round table they're going to go for him. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's
yeah,
that.
yeah, I'm willing to go with that. Yeah, okay, Ruth. Bye, Ruth.
Because I don't think it's a good decision at all for Jonathan, but
No,
maybe Alan and Kat know that.
yeah, and maybe Jonathan's hubris will get the better of him. Maybe like I'll murder and I'll claim that I was framed and it's too, but actually people will just go, you did it.
Mhm.
Uh, so hey,
I
what
do feel like he's
about
getting a little confident in this episode generally.
yeah,
Sometimes he's a little bit smug about sort of getting away with it so far. I think maybe by the time you're in the third episode, you're like, oh, we're getting away with it, and the excitement of that can maybe make you be a little bit too cocky.
yeah, yeah. I have one final thought about the episode that I'm going to throw in here, and maybe I'm not the best person to talk about this, but it's come up a few times in the traitors. Listeners have commented on it, and I couldn't help but notice it. I wonder if, and I don't want to get like, I know it's a celebrity show and it's fairly light-hearted, but I do feel like it's worth mentioning that is there some sort of unconscious bias going on? I couldn't help but notice the first two people banished are two people of color, and it is a thing that happens sometimes on this show, and I just felt like it was worth throwing out there, and maybe listeners, you can give us your thoughts. Is it just a coincidence? Is there something to it? Does it say something? Yeah, is it significant? I don't know. I don't know if you
I
had
think
been
it's
noticed
worth,
it, Eliana.
yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, and I think perhaps there's a discussion to be had there. Yeah, it'd be great to know what the listeners think.
Yeah, yeah. But I've certainly seen it on other seasons, and listeners on YouTube often comment on it.
If you
I've
see
got a
something that you think is, yeah, a pattern, if it's coming up as a pattern, then yeah,
yeah,
maybe I think there's
yeah.
something to say about it.
We've got a couple of other listener comments here. One is from Sean, who sent an email. Oh, this is what I said I was going to come back to. So Sean has got this hot take on Stephen Fry. I'm going to edit Sean's email slightly. Uh, but Sean says, I've always said that Stephen Fry was setting himself up for a fall by doing Traitors, as it really does specialise in making pretentious people who think they're smart look stupid, and I've gotten those vibes from Fry for a while. I think he's been showing it on the show already. Bear in mind, we've had 40 years of his public image being that he's the smartest man in the room, but he solved none of the puzzles, which you said, Eliana. He's supposedly a Shakespeare buff, but couldn't remember who died in Hamlet. You brought this up. He has misquoting Sherlock Holmes at the start of the first round table, and this is just two episodes in. Obviously, I'm not saying he's thick, but I do think a good 75% of our assumption that he's some kind of deep thinking intelligentsia is rooted in the fact that he's posh, well spoken, and rich enough to go to Cambridge. I've read a little bit of his one of his memoirs about going to like boarding school when he was like 5 years old or something wild. So, this is still Sean. So, I don't have high hopes for him in the game. Everyone around him has assumed he's super smart for 40 years because it's the brand he's cultivated. And Sean says, love the pod. It's the only Traitors pod I return to regularly. Keep up the good work. And I sort of semi-agree with that. I do find that people fawn over Stephen Fry a bit much. And he obviously is clever. On QI, he probably has an earpiece in feeding him a lot of that stuff that makes him seem like he has this endless font of knowledge. So I can absolutely agree with what Sean is saying here. Maybe people wrongly assume he's like a natural genius that's maybe a bit over the top. Any thoughts on that, Eliana?
I think Sean's got a good point. And this is not personal to Stephen Fry. I think, as you say, I think you worded it well with it being like a brand of intelligence. He absolutely is intelligent, but this idea of him being a genius, I think sometimes the kind of mythology around genius is not entirely useful. And I don't think I don't think he is, miles above there necessarily. I think a lot of people in there are highly intelligent, and I think he's sort of on par with a few of them. And he's not wowed me with any kind of Einstein level of figuring things out yet. So yeah, I think Sean's onto a good thing there.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's not personal. I think, like you said, his background, his accent, they add to our assumptions of what it means to be clever. That uh, we're sort of conditioned into thinking that, and it's not always true.
yeah. And I'm going to use that that quote of you to promote the podcast of you just going, I'm not wowed by him.
Oh no, I don't
I'm
want
kidding.
Stephen Fry and his
I'm
uh his
kidding.
henchmen to come for me. Please don't.
I wouldn't do that to you. I'm just also going to give Sean a bit of a shout out here because Sean is a writer and has this really interesting book which I have just ordered a copy of. It's called Rainbows in the Rough: The Unlikely Queer Icons That Shaped a Closeted Queen. And I saw it in his email signature. I've seen it on Sean's Instagram, and it sounds really fascinating. So I'm gonna give it a plug here. Here's a little synopsis. In Rainbows in the Rough, writer and cultural commentator Sean Ponsonby queers the canon in the most gloriously unexpected way. This witty, deeply personal memoir meets cultural critique, tracks the queer coming of age of a closeted working class kid in 1990s Britain, not through the expected icons of glitter and drag, but via prog rock, American sitcoms, Bruce Springsteen, and Laurel and Hardy. Part queer pop culture confessional, part takedown of mainstream LGBTQ plus representation, Ponsonby blends sharp humour, music nerdery, and poignant reflection in essays that span from Stan Laurel to Queen, Freddie Mercury to Pretty Woman. I think it sounds like a really great book, and I'm looking forward to reading it. So,
Sounds like a
uh,
lot of
Rainbows in the Rough is the title. I recommend every. In fact, I'll put a link to it in the episode description as well. I have one more listener comment I'm gonna add in here, and it's from the Puppet Strings on YouTube, which is referencing something that Lindsay, my co-host in episode one, mentioned. The Puppet Strings says, I had similar thoughts to Lindsay about the murder in plain sight. I love those types of murders in general, but how they had to do this one was unfair as it meant only the women would be targeted. And I think someone else made this comment on YouTube that maybe it was easier to like I don't know. Maybe that's like an extreme way of looking at it, but was it easier because it was all about touching someone in the face? Is it more likely the traitors would do that to a female player than a male player, and therefore that made it a bit unfair? Do you think there's anything in that, Eliana?
maybe it says something about boundaries and body politics, not to get into that too much,
Mm,
but why are we more comfortable to break a woman's kind of personal bubble and touch a woman than, say, a man? I think I hadn't thought about that, but there's something really interesting in, yeah, sort of addressing why do we feel that way? Why do we feel like it's easier to touch a woman? Sure,
yeah.
it shouldn't be a natural feeling. It's clearly something we've, been led to believe.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think it could have gone either way. It should be able to go either way, but there is something in the way we've been socialized to feel that it's easier to touch a woman's face.
Hmm. Yeah, I
What do you think?
absolutely hadn't thought about it, but it did make me think that the I think the three traitors in this case did automatically assume it'll be too obvious to touch one of the men's faces. Like there's not an easy way to do it. So it's they somehow thought it was more or less conspicuous to try and touch a woman's face. And
Hmm.
yeah, does that say something interesting? And does it make the task unfair? Hadn't crossed my mind, but it's a really, really interesting uh, point. So head to YouTube, look at the comments, get involved in the discussion. I sort of responded to it there. I think someone else then responded too. So there's a bit of discussion going on the YouTube pages. Now, listeners, remember that Eliana and I have been playing the Trade Our Traitor this whole time and may still be playing it right now. Before we conduct our own banishment and reveal what we have been dishonest about, Eliana, I mentioned the Cinema Museum in London up at the top of the episode. Tell us a bit more about what's going on there. How should we get involved?
Yeah, I've started volunteering at the Cinema Museum this year. It's based in London, in Kennington. I do tour guides there. I also volunteer at screenings. And I want to plug this place because it's so cool. So few people seem to know about it. People who are really interested in the world of cinema and cinema history. It just seems to fly under the radar, and it's a beautiful building. It's a charity. It's volunteer run, and it needs people going through the doors. It does need money. It
Mhm.
needs donations. The place has a few years, 4, 5 years, to raise a certain amount of money in order to keep the land that they're on. Otherwise, they'll be kicked out. And the amount of, stuff they have in the archives, I don't know where that would go. It'd be a very sad day to see the museum close. It's got um, items from the history of cinema going, so it focuses on British cinema going. So it's got stuff right from the sort of late 20th century right up till today, mostly focusing on um, I meant the late 19th century. Stuff from the late 19th century all the way up until today, mostly focusing on, cinema going over those sort of golden years, from like the 20s to the 40s. Um, I could talk about it all day. I feel like I'm beginning to bore right now, so I will stop. Uh, but please come. The best ways to experience it is to just come to an event in the evening, and you can actually walk through the whole museum, and see all the lovely things on the walls, to get into the main kind of the main room where they all screen films. There's a bar, there's a cafe. You can buy secondhand film books. Um, please come. I think you'll love it.
Yeah, I likewise I'm ashamed to say I've never been. I've heard of it and I'd never, which is weird. I'm a huge film fan and love going to the cinema. So I have now booked my ticket because we talked about it yesterday. So I'm going on the 27th of November because, to see, I can't remember the name of the film, but I've booked my ticket. I'm really excited. It's one of the 30s films with a woman in the main role. She's escaping. She's been framed for murder appropriately for the
Oh, there we
podcast.
go. Okay, so the program specifically that you've booked for is called Women and Cocaine, run by the brilliant Caroline Cassin, which is, I don't know if I'm allowed to have favorites, but my favorite program at the Cinema Museum. It's incredible, and as you say, it's pre-code cinema, so it's before Hollywood brought in censorship in 1935. There's a sort of 5-ish year window, give or take, of women in these amazing starring roles, getting all the best punchlines, having the sort of action parts in Hollywood films, in speaking Hollywood films. So, once sound had come in, before Hollywood sadly puts a stop to that for quite a few decades. So yeah, these films, they feel so surprisingly modern, and they're always brilliant. And Caroline also always gives a brilliant introduction to them and does a little raffle. So there's so much to love.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to it. And look at the trailer tackling feminism right here. What a day! What a day! Uh, I am going to give a little shout out to something that I should have mentioned again before. I mentioned this at the start of the pod, but I'll say it again. I always say I'm a writer at the start of the podcast, but I now actually have a new book coming out. It's my third book, but my first poetry collection. It's called From the Juniper Room. Is available now to order online, and I'm doing a couple of launch events. I always promote the podcast social media, but it's great if you could follow my personal sort of writer profile. So on Instagram, it's at Matthew J. Keeley, or on Facebook, if you're still using Facebook, it's Matthew Keeley Writer. First launch event, Saturday 18th of October in Stirling in Scotland. Second launch event, Saturday 25th of October in London at the Kirkdale Bookshop in Sydenham, where
I'll
I'll
be there.
be, you'll be there, and
I can't wait.
be have copies of the book, signing them, reading for the book. In Stirling, I'll have another couple of poets with me who are going to be doing great readings, all sorts of fun things happening. So check out my social media to find out more about that. It'd be amazing if you were able to come along in either Stirling or London. As for the podcast, to make sure that you're up to date with the pod, the Traitors news updates, occasionally little videos from me. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Trader Podcast. And again, Instagram have changed the rules recently, meaning I can't go live anymore without at least 1,000 followers. So I'm endeavouring to reach that goal. The podcast is now uh, we're at about 810 followers at this point, which is great. Even over the last couple of episodes, so many more people have come on and followed. You can send me your questions there. You can DM me. You can email me at thetradarpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can do what James did and leave a voice message at memo.fm/thetradarpodcast, and you can hear yourself on the pod. It's also really helpful, of course, to subscribe on wherever you're listening or watching, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is, and maybe even leaving a nice star rating or review. And if you lastly want to support the pod, you could do a couple of things. You could do what Sarah, JD, Grace, RJ, Megan, and Angus have all done in the last week or so, which is to donate on the coffee.com page. That's ko-fi.com/ Matthew Keeley. That link is in the episode description. If you wanted to go and put in a little one-off donation, you don't need to subscribe to anything. You could do that. Or if you want some merch, like my wonderful notebook here, you could visit the Redbubble page. That's thetrader.redbubble.com to look at my t-shirt and mugs and notepads and all sorts of things. I've got a Trader sticker on my laptop now. I've been buying my own merch. It's great fun. So a couple of people have done that as well. So thank you very much. Now, whew, take a breath. It's time for our banishment as we conclude the podcast and conclude the Trader Traitor.
Dum dum
Uh,
dum 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 dum. Is that the right theme tune, or was I going off a bit there?
that's it. No, you've got it. You've
That's
got it.
it.
I've been wearing my shield this whole time, Eliana. You might have noticed, and it's here for a reason because I'm going to use the shield. I'm
Whoa.
hiding it in one hand, and now you have to guess which hand is the shield in. If you're correct, you get to choose whether you go first or second here.
Oh, okay. I thought this was part of the live for a minute. I was like, this is elaborate. I'm gonna say it's in your right hand.
That is
You-
this hand.
Yes.
You are correct. You found my shield. Would you like to guess my lie first or second?
I'm gonna guess yours first.
Okay. What do you think I'm lying to you
I think
about?
my guess is going to be underwhelming. I really struggled. Like you've obviously you're so good at this, but I feel like you've got even better since I was last on the podcast in January. In January, I wrote down a couple options. I was sort of toying between them. I've written one thing down and I am not convinced by it.
Okay.
I wrote down that you said when we were talking about the mission, I'm looking into your eyes now to see if you're getting scared, if I'm in the right. Um, you said there was a similar chain mission on the New Zealand traitors. I mean, there very well could have been, but I feel like you've used this kind of lie before. Maybe you're just reusing it, thinking it will fly over my head. It was like such a bit was slipped in so confidently. I'm thinking maybe you've never seen the chain mission before. I've not watched the New Zealand traitors, so I don't know. But that's me guessing your lie. How did I do?
Okay. I can reveal that I thought you may think that was a lie, but in fact it was the truth. And we have seen a mission very like this on Traitors New Zealand. So I think I've gotten away with it. I'll tell you
Oh,
what my lie was. It was a sneaky small one.
mm.
It was about Mark. And I said that when Mark stormed out of the banishment room, he kicked the chairs.
Oh! No, I knew that you didn't do that. Oh my God, I didn't. I just, oh God, I must have looked away at that moment. Oh, I'm so annoyed because I
Uh,
thought to myself, I didn't see that. And I didn't even correct you. I thought it must be such a small, ah, I am
yeah.
so annoyed at myself.
That happens quite often on in this game that you hear someone say something and you just think, "Oh, I didn't notice that," and actually it's the other person lying to you, and that's why you didn't notice it. So Mark
Oh.
did not kick a chair. Uh, I now have to guess your lie though. So I also only wrote down one thing. I really struggled, and I'm gonna go with, and this may just be that I am oblivious and haven't noticed this. I don't think Celia Imrie is on social media and made a video about what happened in the cabin. Is that your lie?
Yes. Oh, it really was like planted in there. Like I was gonna put it in so naturally, like, oh my God, did you see what Celia posted this morning? And then like I started sweating and then I felt my face go serious and I was like, so I also want that I love the cast's social media. Oh, yes, you got me. So
I
Emery does have Instagram,
ah
but she didn't post this
okay.
morning. I actually went through social media this morning to see who you were following and who you weren't. So I thought I'm not going to trip and say Alan Carr posted something because you're following, you liked the one he did yesterday, but you weren't following Celia. So I thought I would
No.
get away with
That was very clever, and I want it to be true. But and when you mentioned Alan's video with Kat, I thought, oh well, that is true because I've seen that. So maybe this is true, but it was all I had to go on. Uh, so
that.
well done,
Yeah.
me.
I thought I'd sort of
Commiserations.
put enough fluff around it that you just wouldn't notice. But no, it does stand out like a sore thumb a little bit. It's not a subtle one. Imagining Celia doing a sort of reenactment of Claudia in the cabin. I thought
Maybe
maybe
she
it'd be a
will do
bit too
it
outrageous to
to
be,
have made it.
yeah.
Well, thank you for playing. It was fun, and thank you for joining me on the podcast again. I hope it's been an enjoyable morning for you, Eliana.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Matthew.
And thank you to the listeners. I'll be back with coverage of the next episode very, very soon with another guest co-host. Until then, later, traitors. That's my new sign off. Um,
I love it. Latest traders.
later, traitors.